Back here on Oklahoma Chronicle, sitting down with Forrest Bennett, the new AFL-CIO president, and for the next few days, at least till the end of the month, the state representative for District 92. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really an honor to be here. I appreciate that you guys are doing this show and that I get to be on it.
Well, happy to have you here. Obviously, a lot of things changing for you. You have been in office since 2016. Eventually, you were going to term out, of course, but why leave your role as a state legislator now?
That's a great question. I mean, I was asked by some folks in the labor movement here in Oklahoma to consider running for this, and I went home and talked to my wife about it, and it was a pretty sort of easy thing. We talked right before taping this that, you know, sometimes in jobs you need a spark. And 9 years in the legislature, I felt like I had accomplished, you know, the things that I went there to do, and had sort of reached the limits of what I was able to do as a legislator, especially as a member of the Minority Caucus. And I saw this role as an opportunity to continue doing a lot of the work that I've already been doing, which is, you know, looking out for working families and trying to advance those causes, and doing so in a nonpartisan way. And I've worked really well with the labor movement over the last 9 years, and so to get to represent those folks is really an honor. And I consider it to be more of just an extension and an expansion of my constituency. So changing where I work, but not necessarily changing what I'm working towards.
All right, and I do want to talk a little bit more about your new role here in a little bit, but I hope you indulge me here as I ask you some questions about the job that you are soon to be leaving here, because I want to know what it is, and you kind of hinted at the challenge, but what it is really like to be a Democratic lawmaker in the state of Oklahoma, where you are in a super minority.
Yeah. I was 7'5" when I started this job, and now I'm only 6'6". It's been beat down. It has been, in ways, surprisingly difficult, and in ways really enriching. And I've had a lot of opportunities to think about this because I'm writing up sort of my farewell statement, and I really hit my stride in this job when I got into our leadership team and was tasked with helping my caucus get their legislation advanced. And I had to really forge relationships with Republicans in order to help my caucus.
You knew going in you were going to have to do that,
Oh,
right?
yeah. But for my
I mean, just from a math problem.
Oh, absolutely. But like the approach that our caucus had in the first few years that I was in the legislature was more of a sort of loyal opposition. We're not going to help you because you don't help us kind of attitude. And there was room for that, certainly. But our caucus makeup changed a lot, and we got newly elected folks from education sectors and things like that were like, I want to really see what I can get done. And a lot of us sort of just felt like, well, that's impossible. But they said, no, let's give it a try. That was sort of the sentiment of the caucus. And so we have been more productive in finding a way to thread that needle between standing up for our values and the folks that sent us up to the Capitol, and finding ways to work with Republicans at a time when, I mean, you know, politics is more partisan than it's ever been before in modern times, has been a really enriching challenge. And so I leave the legislature, I feel like, having a better perspective on politics than I did walking in, which is, I think, would shock a lot of folks.
So what do you think doesn't work at the state capitol from a Democratic perspective trying to get something done? The opposition thing can be problematic?
Yeah, really, again, it comes down to personalities.
Because I've seen, you know, you've been oppositional before.
Yeah.
You know, you have spoken your mind many times.
Yeah, I have. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I have Republican colleagues say, hey, appreciate you said that, I wish I could say that. And then I've also had other people come up to me and pull me off the floor and take issue with what I've said. But the way that I treat those experiences, and to the credit of the Republicans that I work with, they gave me the opportunity to express myself and explain myself, and I sought to understand where they were coming from. And in those ways, it really just comes down to the relationships that you're building and whether the person on the other side of that conversation is willing to do that. And I have to give a lot of my Republican colleagues, with whom I disagree on a lot of things, credit that they, one, tolerated a lot of my boisterous opinionating, but also that they were willing to share where they were coming from and listen to the degree that they did to me and why I felt the way I did. And so I'm answering the question, what doesn't work, by answering the ways that it can.
Sure,
because
sure.
some
I
of my
think that's
colleagues
fine.
refuse to, but a lot of them do.
Within the Democratic Party, nationally, the brand has taken a bit of a hit. They're digging themselves out of a hole when it comes to that. There's this infighting now. Who's going to be who's going to carry the banner of the Democratic Party? Should it be a moderate Dem? Should it be a more progressive, on the more liberal end? What do you think needs to happen nationally in order to get results for the Democrats?
Finally, somebody asking me what I.
They're all watching. They're all listening.
I think that what we can take from the last round of elections was that whether it was Zohran Mamdani, who's a very left in New York City, or Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Virginia, who are more moderate, they stuck to a message of affordability, and they were really disciplined in that message. And what I feel my Democratic colleagues in Oklahoma and I have sort of tapped into is the fact that, or need to tap into, is the fact that regardless of what your marginalized community is, universally, the way to get out of a bad situation is financial security, and we have a lot of sort of subgroups and flanks within our party that pull us in one direction or another, just like my Republican colleagues have, in their party, and we need to find a message that works for all of them. And I think that is a message of affordability and making sure that we talk about, and I've talked about this a little bit over the last couple of weeks, that it's less left to right and more up to down, that there are interests that are counting on us to be dividing ourselves over cultural issues so that they can continue to build an economy that's working for a few people at the expense of a lot of people.
All right, so that leads me back to the job that you just took, which is the job of a union president. And I think some people might be like, union president, AFL-CIO, are unions even around anymore in Oklahoma? Obviously, you used to have a much bigger role in American life. The unions, they've diminished a bit. Am I wrong to say that? Oklahoma's a right-to-work state.
Sure.
I mean, you're going from one underdog role to another one.
It's what I know. It's what pops out on my resume. Yeah, unions are still very much a part of communities all across the country, and certainly here in Oklahoma. We have over 100,000 folks that belong to a union in Oklahoma. 220 unions that are members of the AFL-CIO, which is sort of a union of unions. We represent all the unions in the halls of power, and my goal is to help work to grow the membership, bring in new unions, organize where we haven't before, and educate and prepare our membership to go to the Capitol and other places where decisions are made and make our voices heard. But they are still the front line of making sure that workers are getting compensated fairly, have the right kind of benefits and protections in the workplace, and have a real way to make their concerns heard in the workplace.
And I guess my big question, and the last one, is do you think that you're going to have more impact as this union president, more than what you had as a state lawmaker?
Remains to be seen, but I do think that because I'm leaving a partisan role and entering a nonpartisan role where, we have, I think, 60% of our probably active union population in Oklahoma are Republican, 40% are Democrat, but oftentimes in these meetings that I sit in, you can't tell where people are politically because they put their faith in the union and the labor movement above their partisan differences. And I think that, we can talk about the strength of the unions now versus before Right to Work swept the nation, but the reality is, regardless of the strength of the union in the state, union folks have their eyes on the right kind of prize, and that is, we look less at the partisan sort of label of the politicians that we're talking to, and more where they are on the issues that matter to us. And I think the rest of the nation can look to, and certainly the rest of Oklahoma can look to the unions as an example of people who are sort of trying to push through the partisanship and get back to the questions that really matter, and holding politicians to account on the things that really affect all of us. So I'm looking forward to that, and would happy to come back in like a year and tell you how successful we've been.
Okay, and we'll look forward to having you back.
Great.
Forrest Bennett, thanks so much. We appreciate it.